Hello and welcome to Media Aesthetics Week 6. It is our final week. I thought I would just go through and read through the slides and give you guys some context with them. They're a bit light on overall topics for the paper, and I just want to make sure you have a lot of information to use for your references. Like I said, this is about editing. It's about bringing everything that we've talked about together, all of the pieces. That's really what an editor does in the end. And again, you want to be thinking about that all along the production. On the front end of productions, how can I be capturing the right shots, the right angles, all that kind of stuff to give the editor as much to use in the back end as possible. So again, today we'll be going through and talking about how that adds aesthetic value to your pictures, and then you can follow along as well in the module. I put up the slides so that you can see them a little bit easier. I noticed that my video is covering some of the information, so just to look at the actual slides and listen along with this to get the most from it. We'll be screening Citizen Kane. I know what it is, older movie, 1941, black and white, but it's still to this day a great movie. And then if you want to, there's also a movie called Mank, which is about the screenwriter of Citizen Kane in that time period. It's done by David Fincher. It's on Netflix. You can find it. It is absolutely awesome. So if you're into movies, you're into motion picture film, and you really want to see more and get some behind the scenes aspect of it, take a look at that as well because it's really great. Again, this is our last week, so make sure that you do get your assignment in, particularly that final paper. It's going to be due on the 10th, which is next Wednesday, 10 February. And try to submit it early. I don't want you guys messing around with that deadline because if you do submit it after the deadline of the course, I can't grade it. Canvas locks it out, so it's an automatic 0. For those, I think it's 35 points, so it's a large portion of the grade. So just make sure you get it in there early, and there'll be no worry about it. And we'll be covering, like I said, from edit to export. So let's take a look at these slides. You all know how to get a hold of me after the course. You're welcome to shoot me an email if you you want to talk about a project or whatever you guys are working on. Stay in contact. I will be teaching next semester as well, both writing, 2 courses of writing, one in Zoom and one over asynchronous, just like this was. And then I'll be teaching this course again, asynchronous as well. So you guys are welcome to join those courses. Love to have you. These are all the projects I'm working on and how you can get a hold of me. Again, week 6 overview of the Canvas module. Go in there and see what's in there. Review these slides. The actual slides are in there. Watch Citizen Kane is the recommendation, and then absolutely get that paper done like I talked about. And we've covered so far light and sound, exposition, color and art, wardrobe, composition, mise en scène, what goes into the scene, cinematography, and then of course today editing. Overview of the course, and I think it's a pretty good overview of aesthetics of film in general. I hope you guys agree. And I really do think it shows you all of the artistic elements that go into making a film beyond just the other kind of technical things and directing and producing and all that kind of stuff. So that's an overview of today. The edit. We literally could spend an entire semester on editing, the aesthetics of editing. I got my MFA at Chapman, and I have friends that are editors, went to school for actual editing as their major, and they literally took courses that were, semester long on the aesthetics of editing. Looking at the images, looking at the sequencing of the edit, the timing of the edit. There's so many things that you have control over as the editor. The overall pacing of a movie is a huge factor, the aesthetic feel of it. Everything that goes into bringing those frames into motion, into a motion picture. And then, of course, successful editors have really great relationships with their directors and with the team. But the directors in particular, is almost like a symbiotic relationship between a director and the editor over time that develops. And it really comes down to the fact that the images that we choose have a huge overall impact in the film. So again, consider that when you're making the film up front, when you're capturing images, think about all those things that you can do to help out the editor in the back end. When we talk about editing, we do it all the time with our human eyes, the things that we look at, what we're editing out, what we're choosing not to pay attention to. And that really plays into the motivation of what you're choosing. Why are we showing a particular thing on screen? How does it apply to the story? That's really the number one aesthetic value is should this even be in the frame or not when we're thinking about those framing. Same with lighting and everything that goes into it. Think about the motivation for that. If it's a character like on Lucifer, and he's the devil, and his bar should look like it's reds and blacks and dark and sinister almost. That's the motivation for that setup. And then those scenes that happen in the bar tend to be more fast paced and edgy because, again, the motivation for it is that it's a sinister environment. You'll want to understand that all editors have a workflow that they follow. You can follow the link in the presentation if you want to read more about it. But there's a specific workflow that editors will follow, and it really does play into their aesthetic and how they're sequencing those motion picture clips. So take a look at that if you want to read more. Same thing with managing a timeline. This is a little bit more technical, but it's when you're doing editing, whatever it is, Premiere, DaVinci, Avid, they all pretty much work the same, where you have an editing timeline of film or clips of video, and then you're cutting that timeline and managing that sequence of films. And how the editor manages that really plays into that editor's overall thumbprint on a film. It varies massively between editor to editor, the way that they manage their workflow, and then in particular the way they manage their clips in that sequence, and the pacing of it all. Terminology and cuts, when you're interacting with an editor, it's great to be able to understand and speak their language. You'll get much more on the same page of an aesthetic if you can understand the terminology that they're using and the cuts that they're using. Things like an L cut or a J cut, to say that. And when I'm talking to an editor and I say that, and they know that I understand, that my voice is carrying over video, or my video is carrying over voice, depending on an L or a J cut. It just makes that relationship work better and more likely to come up with the aesthetic that you want when you speak that kind of language. And again, there's a link in there to some terminology and cuts that are common to the editing world. Color correction is massive. The colorization of a film. Traffic is an excellent example about this. Somebody might have brought it up in one of the discussions. Um, whenever we're in Mexico in the movie Traffic, it has this kind of grainy amber feel to the overall environment that's been colored into the actual film of the picture. Same thing when they're in America, the United States, it has this bright, shiny blues and pretty skies and very light feeling to it. And again, that was a decision that the filmmakers made to correct the color of what was actually recorded to give it that kind of feel. And you see that in a lot of movies, but it was really well done in Traffic. Sound and music, again, huge portion of the aesthetic. The things that we hear, the music that's being played, all of that has a big value in the aesthetic appeal of the films. And again, it's the editor that's placing that, the timing of it, what scene it's going along with. So really, again, being in tune and being on the same page and communicating as a team, what you want is really core. Same thing with text and graphics. The editor needs to know where the texts are going to go on screen. Maybe you're doing a war movie and you're doing titles to say Afghanistan, 2001, along the bottom, or those type of things that scroll on screen. Those titles, you need to be communicating that in the script to make sure that um, the editor is putting that where it's supposed to be, because it can have a huge impact on the aesthetics if it's the wrong titles for particular scenes. Same thing with graphics. He has to know, or she has to know, where the graphics are going, how long they're going to be there, how they're going to be used, that type of stuff. Again, it just comes down to all kinds of coordinating together. And then finally, once you have a project edited and it's ready to go, it needs to be exported to platforms. So are you going to be putting it up on Facebook? Is it going on Vimeo? Is it going on YouTube? Am I going to render it in 4K, 2K, 1080p, 720? All those kinds of decisions are affected by what platform you're going to put it on. If you're sending it off to go to iTunes, it needs to be in a specific codec that your team needs to have that put into. So that all comes down to the editing. Again, this is a bit more technical side of what we've been talking about, but it all plays together into the 6 rules of editing. Really, is what it plays into. And it's the real question of why are we doing these edits? And these really boil down to the aesthetics. We're cutting for emotion in the film. The editor is making a specific point to cut somebody off and go to something else for the emotional beats of the cinema. to advance the story forward is a huge part about it. Maybe there is significant amount of action that's happening in a house, but we want to jump ahead to the office building that the next scene is. We're not going to film somebody driving. We might show maybe a scene or two of them driving, but we don't necessarily want to show the entire transition. So we're advancing the story forward using that cut. The rhythm is a huge part about it. A movie like Pulp Fiction, where it's so fast and you've got edit after edit, versus something like Hateful Eight, where you have these beautiful, big, expansive Wild West shots. So the rhythm is much slower. We're at the pacing of horses, not cars. So again, the film is being cut specifically to a particular rhythm. Eye trace is a big one. You want to cut when if there's an argument going on in a scene or a fight or any kind of quick action, and you're cutting from eye line to eye line. You want to kind of trace that motion and give it that aesthetic pacing again of fast motion. Recreating reality. The Matrix. We watched some clips for The Matrix, and some people have talked about it in a discussion. They did an incredible job of recreating reality in this virtual space. I mean, by the end of that movie, most people feel like the Matrix is a real thing, and it's because they've created these boundaries for us to see the movie within and take place, just like our writing exercise. They built such an incredible world of the Matrix that they really did recreate this space of reality, and the editor can then go in and manipulate that and use it even more and elevate it to another level that's just incredible. And then, of course, physical space for cutting. You might need to actually physically set some boundaries, or maybe the shot is too wide and you're physically cutting that shot smaller to not show something, to put it out of the frame, and physically cutting the film as necessary. So we've got basic effects. Are another one. They really do add to the meaning, the mood, and the depth. And again, they should always serve the story. They should have an absolute motivation for why you're doing these effects. Um, some basic effects are transitions, fades, dissolves, wipes, whip pans. We talked about. I think we talked in the discussion. Somebody was talking about doing whip pans in snowboarding, and I think that's an absolute great idea. It would really help carry that emotion. It's a great basic effect. Zoom, you don't see too much, but these are all like choices that the director and the editor make together. Obviously, this little image up here in the top right with Star Wars. George Lucas made that decision early on to use wipes in the Star Wars movies. And today they kind of would look out of place and it seemed odd, but back then it seemed like it fit for the motion and the aesthetics of that movie in the late 70s, early 80s. Really interesting to see how some people still are able to find uses for the basic transitions. We talk about effects. That's everything that boils down, like we were talking earlier about text. Even something that's just coming to, be a title is an effect. So you need to think about how those are being used. How is it playing on the overall value of the movie? Would it be better off just to have the character say that we're landing in Afghanistan, or show that with a sign that says Afghanistan, arrivals at the airport or something? Thinking about how you're using text is a big part of, how you're using effects in general and how you're adding to the aesthetics of the film. Matte paintings, they used to use them a lot more back in the old days, where they would actually paint the backgrounds, um, you know, and then use a depth of field effect to kind of make it look like it's real. Not so much today, but you still do see it on television. A lot of television shows. If you look out the windows, especially of like some, Everybody Loves Raymond or Friends, you can clearly see that out the windows are set. But they're still capturing that illusion, by fading it out. And again, if the action is great on scene and the directing is good, we're not even noticing that kind of stuff in the background anyway. Again, it's just there for kind of like the aesthetic background effect at that point. Some of the other things, again, composting, rotoscoping, animation, they all play into how the effects are used, and again, then how the movie feels to us. Motion capture and computer generated imagery. I don't know if anybody's seen The Mandalorian lately, but there's a great clip on YouTube. Just search Mandalorian, um, you know, special effects or a Mandalorian green screen room. they've got a room that's it started as green screen, but now they use digital imagery on the walls. So it's like one giant LED room that they can put anything they want on those screens, and then the action that takes place looks like it's happening in that environment. Here we see this clip down the bottom here with these gladiators that are all like, grouped around in a room. They're in a green screen room, and then it's painted on digitally over on the right side. You can see it makes it instantly look like they're coming through this valley, in a mountainous area, and really it's just a room with green on the wall that's keyed out with a chroma key. But all these decisions, again, how you're going to use, are you going to use green screen? Are you going to use a computer generated room? Are you going to use, excuse me, matte paintings? These are all decisions that you have to think about when you're doing filmmaking, and especially how they're going to serve the aesthetic mood of the film, and think about how they're going to be used to add value. Sounds are another one that have huge aesthetic impact. What we hear are the sound is such a great device for connecting moments, relationships. It's such a great connective device in our films, and we use it so often. You really have to think about, well, how and why you're using them. You have diegetic and non-diegetic sounds are really the two that we have in films. And again, what does that mean? A diegetic is dialogue. So right now, this is a diegetic sound. What I'm speaking. I have a little fan that you might be able to hear over here on the side. It's kind of in the scene. Again, mise en scène. What's in the scene? A truck just drove by outside my garage. That's now in this scene. In world effects, sound effects. If I drop something, if you heard that, you can hear things drop in my real world. That's all diegetic sounds that are in the film. And then non-diegetic sounds are things like narration. If I was to go back after this was recorded and add in some more narration over it, that would be non-diegetic. And then external graphics are considered that as well. If we're putting in a title in here and it comes up along the bottom right here, right? If it comes right in here, a title comes along. That's added in. And it has maybe it has a swoosh that comes in with it. Non-diegetic. Cinematic score, it's added in afterward. Music that's added. Sound effects that are added. Any of that kind of stuff. So Foley would be non-diegetic because you're adding it after the filming. There's another link in here if you want to understand breaking the rules. Is a great video. That kind of goes over it a bit more and in depth, and you can see that as well. And then, again, it all boils down to how is this adding to the aesthetics, which is what our class is about. And, the sounds that we add, if it's a scary horror movie, and I think is a great example, and a character is in a house at night and it's dark. Well, if they're just walking through the house and it's dark, it's not that scary. But the second you add in some non-diegetic sound, maybe the sound from Halloween or creepy cracking of doors opening, it totally now changes the entire mood. Rather than somebody just walking through a dark room, they're walking through a scary, dark sounding room. So it has a very big impact in your films. It doesn't just apply to horror, but think romantic movie as well. Girl meets guy and they come on the scene for the first time, and the happy-go-lucky music starts playing in the background when they look at each other. It just adds to the overall feeling that they're gonna hook up, that they're gonna go down. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets back together, girl. That whole sequence, you can hear it in your head as soon as you hear that music. So understanding that is a big part of it. And then if you are on a set and you're capturing film, as always, make sure that you're slating, because that's a huge part of finding all that information in the raw footage that the editor is going to need to put together, and then go with that as well. Again, the recommended screening for this week is Citizen Kane. Awesome study in aesthetics. Again, I point out that even in the scene, if you look at the stage, there's so much of this scene right here that's not even real. It's all matte painting. I think the guy is probably standing up on the right is probably the only thing real. But you can see how lighting is used to light the stage, right, and make it seem like that's the center of everybody's attention. And then this character up here is looking down at that, and he's well lit as well. So that's kind of where our focus is meant to be on the two. And look out for that kind of stuff all throughout Citizen Kane, how they use lighting, especially in this black and white world. It's so great and easier to see versus like trying to pick up on a big colorized movie in modern times. But if you enjoy Citizen Kane, or if you've seen it in the past and you understand all the things that we're talking about, definitely watch Mank if you haven't seen it. It is on Netflix. It's David Fincher did it, and it is incredible, and it's really fun. It's the backstory of the writer of Citizen Kane, so it gives you a different perspective. But again, he does it in black and white, and it's like such a great scene setup, and it's so aesthetically pleasing, even in black and white, that after a while you just don't even care that it's not in color because it just seems so fitting, particularly if you're a big enthusiast of film. So check that out. Check out the readings. Again, a reminder that the final paper is due by the 10th of February, which is Wednesday. Please get that in as early as possible, and then follow this link if you want to watch the movie. And then the other one is the Mank one is on Netflix. Just go to Netflix and look it up. So here's this week's web content. I hope you guys are enjoying these. I kind of just put something out when I find something during the week. I kind of pop up in here that's interesting and applicable to the story of what we're talking about with the aesthetics. This is about how a production designer evoked the feeling of memory loss on a set by using different kind of changes to the scenes. You can tell that it's still the same room, but it's a different color and different chairs to represent a different time and period. And then the character kind of doesn't understand why the room isn't right. And even though it's the right room, something doesn't feel right about it. And I love his quote here that he said he wanted the architecture to stay the same throughout it, but really wanted subtle, noticeable differences. So this is a really great way to look into your production design. Check out this article. So here we have the homework summary. I scratched off the reading. No reading for you guys this week. So basically, just watch the movie, watch the Citizen Kane movie, and then watch Mank if you want to. But definitely get your final paper done. I'm leaving you the time open because I know it has to get done early because of just the way the final schedule works here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this class. I hope you got something from it, and then I hope you guys do great on the rest of your finals. And good luck, and hopefully I see you in the future out there in the film world. Thanks.